Hello and welcome to Anderson Community Television. I'm Carol Donahue, your host today of At Your Service. We welcome to today's program Tom Reamer, who is the Assistant Fire Chief with Anderson Fire and Rescue. Welcome back to the program, Tom.
Thank you, Carol.
Well, I think we should congratulate ourselves. We've kind of gone through this winter.
Yep.
We made it. We survived.
Yep.
And
We got a little bit of it left yet. So
we do a little
yep.
bit left, and
Yep.
we're going to talk about fires today. What is the number one cause of fire?
Well, it's
in the
interesting. If you look back over the winter and some of the things we've seen in the media, some of the fires have been occurring. We're still seeing a lot of fires with portable heaters. And we get asked all the time, are portable heaters safe? And the answer is they can be. But again, you have to make sure that it is UL approved. It does have a tip over switch so that if it tips over, that it actually turns itself off. You need to make sure that it's plugged directly into a wall. And you have to make sure it has 3 feet of clearance to any item. But the big thing that the folks I think are losing track of is they're designed to be attended. So it needs to be attended at all times. And I think it's very unfortunate that we're seeing so many fires that are contributed to heaters. Ironically, they're not the number one cause of fires during the winter months.
Really? And now let me see, what would be?
Well, and the next thing people think is candles, but it's actually cooking. Nationwide, statistically, there are more fires during the winter caused by cooking than any other thing. I don't know that I know the actual reason for that, whether it's more people cook because they're stuck in the house, or they're cooking bigger meals. Obviously, we have our holidays in there. So we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, so we've got some big holidays in there. But statistically, the number one cause is cooking, and very preventable fires. So again, never leave cooking unattended. If you've got something cooking on the stovetop, you should be nearby where you can see what it's doing. We do see some grease fires, which is not uncommon. If you've got something frying on the stove and you go away for 10 or 15 minutes, you're working in the basement, you're working upstairs, next thing you know, it got too hot. Maybe it's something in a pot that ran out of water, next thing you know, you've got a fire. And a couple things. If you're cooking with a frying pan or a pot or something on the stove, keep the lid nearby. It's probably the easiest way to put the fire out. Turn the heat off so that you remove the source and put the lid on.
And try not originally to move that.
Never, never move it, especially with grease. We've had several fires where somebody would pick the pan up off the stove and try to move it to the sink to get it into the sink, and the flaming pan has set curtains and other items in the kitchen on fire, or they wind up spilling it, either burning or setting themselves on fire. So again, don't move it. Turn the heat off, which turning the heat off will remove that ignition source, and over a little bit of time, it'll cool down, it'll probably go out. But again, have that lid ready. And if the pan is there, just bring the lid in from one side and just drop it on there. And that'll put the fire out.
And what do we never, ever throw on that fire?
We don't throw flour on the fire. You can use baking soda. Baking soda is safe. So if you've got some baking soda, and some folks will actually take their baking soda and put it in the refrigerator for some period of time so it absorbs some of their odors, and then bring it out and set it on the kitchen counter after it's done its job in the fridge, and then it makes a good source of something that you can throw on the fire. But don't throw flour, but baking soda is good.
And the best possible thing to have, though, is a fire extinguisher.
A fire extinguisher is good. Although with the grease fires, you have to be very, very careful.
Really?
Because it is possible with the energy that comes off of the fire extinguisher that you can actually, if you hit it too hard, you can actually blow some of that grease out of the pan and possibly set something else on fire. So that's where the fire extinguisher, we want one in the house. We want to be prepared to use it. If it's got a liquid involved with the fire, we just have to be very careful.
Now, do the fire extinguishers have to be checked? I mean, do they lose their potency after a couple years, or?
Well, there's two ways to look at this. There's the residential part of it, which there's really no requirements in residential, and then the commercial, there actually is requirements. And the first thing is buy a good fire extinguisher. You want to make sure that it's an ABC, and on the fire extinguisher itself, it'll give you the ABC that tells you what kind of fires it's good for. And ABC is good for all types of fires. You want to make sure that it's big enough for where you're going to put it. If you're in the kitchen and you're trying to just protect a small area, a small 2.5 pound is probably fine. General use about the home, a 5-pound extinguisher is probably the best, and buy a nice quality one. To check it, all you have to do is look at the gauge and make sure that it's still in the green, and that, other than that, periodically, every 6 months, once a year, pick it up, turn it upside down, flip it back and forth, because the powder will settle in it. And the powder will get all caked up in the bottom after sitting for some time, and it might not perform properly. And that's where we get into the commercial. They actually have to be serviced by a technician so that in the commercial buildings that we're sure that they will actually work.
I know a lot of people seem to have gone to hardwood floors in the family room or in the living room where there's a fireplace, but years ago people always kept a rug nearby, and I would think sparks from a fireplace too could cause a bit of a fire.
Yes, yes they can. And actually you can buy rugs for your fireplace that are fireproof. So they're treated so that those sparks and embers won't damage your wood floor, because that's part of why folks will put them there, is to protect the wood floor or the carpet. And so that if you buy one, just buy one that's designed for being around the fireplace.
Oh, I really didn't know that before. Also, this past winter, fortunately it hasn't happened to me or my friends and my family, but we've heard of so many people having frozen pipes.
Yep, it was real big problem this past winter. We had several days, I say several, I'm probably being generous, below zero. I know that we had at least a couple nights where it got to approximately 10 below zero. And the pipes were frozen. And if you watch the nightly news, they reminded you to make sure that if you've got especially sinks or faucets on the outside wall, to leave your cabinet doors open to let the heat get in. If you're really concerned, you can leave the water on a little bit so it just trickles, because moving water is harder to freeze than standing water. But if you have the misfortune that they actually do freeze, that's where we've run into some problem with fires. We've had some folks that'll either possibly set a portable heater in under a cabinet space and leave it unattended. It can overheat either the cabinet itself or something in the cabinet. Or we've had folks that have actually used torches or some other flame type device to try to thaw that out, and that's not a good idea.
Is there a difference between less trickle of water if it's hot water or cold water?
Well, your main pipe is going to feed from both. So you can just leave a little trickle of the cold water on. Now, if you have pipes that are on the outside that are hot or cold, just crack them both open. So if you just crack just a little bit of the hot and just a little bit of the cold, so you know all that water's moving. Again, it's kind of knowing where your pipes are in your house. If they're in a heated space of the home, you're probably going to be all right. And I know that we get a lot of folks that leave their homes for the winter.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of those things where you want to turn the heat down and not waste that energy if you're gone for a week or so, maybe on vacation, trying to go someplace warm. But you also want to make sure you leave enough heat on that your pipes don't freeze. And again, if you are leaving, not knowing what the temperature might be, leave the cabinet doors open. And really, I guess the worst case or the safest way is have somebody help you drain the plumbing. So you could shut the water off whether it's in your basement or where your shutoff is for your house. Shut the water off, and if you drain the lines, then they can't freeze. There's no water in them.
If somebody's going to be checking on your house now and then, and they might use your bathroom facilities or whatever, and you don't want to turn the water off, if you want to leave it on, still just keep it a trickle?
You can leave it a trickle, and that way the water will keep moving in the pipes. That would probably be the best way. But again, having somebody check on the house is a great idea. Even if you leave water in the pipes, you can shut your water off to the house. And I know you and I talked a little bit about that just turning the water off to your house, it's not going to stop the pipes from freezing, but if one freezes and bursts, it's going to keep from the house making a mess. So
it'll just flood the water that's currently in the pipes.
Just it's in the pipe, and then it's going to quit. So that's better than being gone for a week and coming back and know that your water has been running through your house for over a week. That would be bad.
I know I used to be a real estate agent. I remember I had a listing and the people were gone and the water was actually running down their driveway. And heartbreaking, the damage that did. Wow. My
Yeah.
goodness.
And the water bill that you have to pay when you come back.
That is the truth. That is the truth. Now, none of us like to get into a cold car when it's this chilly out as
Yep.
we've had. So what if I go and I decide I'm going to warm up my car and I go in the garage and warm it up? If I keep the main garage door open, is that all right?
Well, a couple things. First thing, we recommend that you not back your car into the garage. And some folks will do that because it's nice and convenient in the morning and you can just pull out and take off. But one of the problems with that is most of the cars have exhaust in the rear. And as you're backing into the garage, which usually takes a little bit more time as you maneuver, you're pushing carbon monoxide into the garage. And especially if once you get it into the garage and you close the garage door and you open the door to the house, you're now introducing carbon monoxide into the house. So the first thing is we recommend that you not back your car in. And I know for me and my wife, one of the things that we do is when we start it up and we're warming it up, we back it out of the garage. And that way I know that I've got some distance between the exhaust and my garage so that depending on what the wind's doing or the wind's blowing, pushing it back in the garage, that I'm not taking that risk of putting the carbon monoxide back in. And especially if you're leaving the car sit for a few minutes, just get it out of the house and don't have that risk. Because really you don't want your car running in the garage. Some kind of mechanical failure and next thing you know, you've got some kind of a fire under the engine and your car's still in your garage. So you pull the car in the garage, shut it off. When you're going to run it, back it out and let it run outside.
And speaking of keeping warm, let's revisit that fireplace situation.
Yes.
Give us a safe way to handle our fireplaces.
Well, again, we see this past winter we saw a lot of folks looking for alternatives for heat. We had so much cold weather that either your furnace wasn't keeping up or you were afraid that having the furnace keep up was going to break the bank. So we had folks that are using portable heaters, doing a lot of different alternatives. And of course, a fireplace, if you've got a fireplace in your house, is a great alternative, especially when you're in that room. Couple things with that. Make sure that if you're using your fireplace, it's been serviced by a professional. At the beginning of every heating season, make sure somebody checks it. That the flue's clean, that it's intact. We've actually seen some where there's been some flue damage over the years. So if something's happened to your flue, maybe you had a chimney fire and didn't realize it, a small one, you could have flue damage. That's the first thing. You want to make sure that that's been checked. The next thing is you want to make sure that the wood that you're using it's dry and it's seasoned, so you're not smoking out your neighbors, you know, putting in the green wood or the tree that was just recently cut down. And with that, sometimes with the cold weather, the fire can be hard to start. So you might want to use a little paper in there underneath it. You can get one of these store-bought logs that might burn a little bit, but never, never, never use any kind of accelerants. And when I say accelerant, you don't want to use charcoal lighter, you don't want to use gasolines or kerosenes, or you don't want to use any of those items in the house, especially if they've been in the garage and they're cold and you bring them in to try to help get that fire going, that they start to vaporize. And you may not realize that once you bring that container in the house, it's vaporizing and it's creating vapors within that room. And then once you get the fire going or you strike a match or click a lighter, that you can actually start the house on fire.
I was reading an article recently that if you use the wrong kind of wood, say if it's still damp, or certain kinds of wood which don't burn as well, that if you have COPD or you have some kind of asthma or lung problem, that can really exacerbate that you have to be very careful.
It should really only be in the first few minutes of starting the fire. And when I say that, sometimes when you start a fire in a fireplace, you'll get some smoke that'll travel out into the room because the chimney's cold.
Oh,
so the chimney's trying to warm up a little bit, and when the chimneys are real cold, sometimes they'll push the smoke back down. So the first couple minutes of trying to get the fire going, you could get it pushed into the room. But really one of the downsides of an open fire is it actually draws a lot of air out of the room.
Right.
Yeah, and takes your heat right up the chimney, which gives you great radiant heat in the room, but overall it could be pulling some of your heat that your furnace has provided and running it right up the chimney.
Now, in the 70s, I think they became popular, those fireplace inserts. Now, do you see many of those still in Anderson?
See a lot of those, and those are another great alternative for supplying heat to the room. And the way the inserts work is they actually reduce how much air they need, and they create a little furnace there. So they're holding a lot of the heat in the box, which is what creates that heat that comes out in your room, so they're very efficient. The downside of them is because they're holding all the heat into that firebox, is the flue gets a lot less combustion, and that makes the flue cold, and that's when you build up a lot more creosote. So your inserts and your wood burners have a high tendency to build up creosotes, which lead to chimney fires. So if you're using an insert or you're burning with some kind of a wood burner, you're probably going to need your chimney cleaned more than once a year, potentially having it checked mid-season to make sure that you haven't built up too much creosote.
And how about these fireplaces that are unvented?
They're reported to be safe, and they provide such a small amount of carbon monoxide that it dissipates through the house. They do say that you shouldn't use them in newer homes because the newer homes are so tight,
airtight,
that all of the potential harmful fumes may not get out as needed. I think the best thing is to use a vented fireplace. That's the safest thing. When we're trying to determine, do our houses leak enough air that the fume, and there's a simple theory that when fuels and things burn, they do put off gases. So even though it's a very, very clean emission, there is still some emissions coming into your home, and they're ruled safe, but personally, I like to see them go outside.
I see. Now, Tom, what can we as a homeowner do to make your job a little easier? Say, God forbid, we do have a call into the fire department. What can we do to make it easier for you to find us?
Great question. Some of the things that we run into is, of course, in the event that you have to call 911, do the best you can to be calm. Be prepared to tell the 911 dispatcher what the problem is, how many people are, or what's involved, and know where you're at. Know the address where you're at, so that you can describe where you are, especially if you're calling from a cell phone. If you're calling from a cell phone, the dispatcher may not know where you're at. And with cell towers and the way they work, so it's important to know that, I'm on this street in Anderson Township, so that you've got the right dispatch center. From there, we see a lot of houses that they're not very well marked. And when I say very well marked, is your address visible from the street? And I always tell folks, if you can't see it at 3 o'clock in the morning, neither can we. So if you're driving down your street at night, coming home from wherever, and it's raining, and you're trying to see the numbers of your house, and you can't see them very easily, we won't either. So make sure your house numbers, preferably on the mailbox, make them big, make them bright, make them offsetting, but make sure we can see them. If you've got, we have a lot of homes where there's a single driveway that serves maybe 2 or 3 houses. You come back a long driveway and it splits off to several driveways. Make sure that those driveways are marked. So you've got 3 mailboxes at the end of the driveway potentially with 3 different addresses, but now we make that fork in the road. Where are we headed? Which house is yours? Again, if your house is on fire, you're having a heart attack, either way, the faster we get there, the better it is for you. And once we get there, we've found your house, do you have a fire hydrant near it? And one of the things we ran into a lot during the winter is we had a lot of snow this winter. So we had the snow plows piling snow up against the fire hydrants, and potentially even neighbors shoveling their driveway and burying the hydrant. Again, if you can't see it, neither can we. So make sure that if you've got a hydrant that services your house, take a few minutes to get out there with a shovel and clear it, so when we come down the street we can see it, and there's a big cap on the front of it. Make sure that we can get to that. And really, as we go into spring, it's really the same issue. We have a lot of folks that have planted in or around the fire hydrants, whether it's a decorative flower bed or maybe some ornamental grasses. And if those are blocking our view, again, we're not going to be able to see it. And again, those are those precious seconds that, if you're having a house fire, that we want to be able to see that and find it. Those guys that are coming down the street in a fire truck are looking for that fire hydrant long before they ever get to your house, and trying to spot where they're going to put their truck and those kind of things. So just making sure it's visible.
If someone were to call and say, my house is on fire, this is my address, you would advise them immediately to get out of the house, correct?
Absolutely.
If they stood with a flashlight in front of their house?
Well, I mean, anything that draws our attention is going to be great. If you've given us a good address, it's clearly marked, we're not going to have an issue. Especially if there's smoke or flames coming from your house, obviously that has a tendency to draw our attention. But again, just making sure that it's clearly marked from the street. And you may not be able to get out as quickly. You're trying to get don't wait for pets. Get your family out, get your kids out. Hopefully the pets will get out with you. Never enter the house fire to get your pets out.
Yeah, you hear such
you
sad
hope they get out
stories.
with you, but if they don't, people come first.
And in the event that something happens, you should have a plan in effect, correct? Especially if you have children in a 2-story home.
Absolutely. If you do evacuate your house, where are you all meeting? If you've got everybody knows how to get out of the house, you should know where the fastest way out of the house is. And are we all going to meet at the mailbox? Maybe there's a big tree in the front yard that's far enough away from the house. Have a meeting place so you've got a plan. If you can't get out of the house, let's say that you're woken by your smoke detectors in the middle of the night and you determine that the fire's near the stairwell. What's your plan to get out of the second floor? And they now make some escape ladders, which are excellent. They're small. You can slide them underneath the bed, and you pull them out, you throw them out a window, and it'll get you out of the second floor.
And they hook under the windowsill?
Yeah, once you open a window, they'll actually hook over the window ledge, and then there's like a Velcro strap you pull, and the steps unfold. It's like almost like a chain ladder that'll unfold, and that'll get you out of the second floor. So in the event that there's only one stairwell, which most homes that have a second floor have, that's a great tool to have to help get out of the house.
And that plan is so important, especially with children, and to make sure everybody's accounted for.
Absolutely. Obviously, we can help you if you're trying to put together a plan. There's some great information online. You can go to the Red Cross website. Just go in and type under your search engine, preparing a home safety plan. So there's some great resources out there to remind you things. Making sure your smoke detectors are good. Making sure if you've got gas in your home, whether it's propane or natural gas, you have carbon monoxide detectors. Make sure you're checking your batteries. Change them out in the spring and change them again in the fall. We tell you to change your clocks, change your batteries. And make sure you've got a fire extinguisher and you know how to use it. Make sure that it's in the green. And you've turned it up and down to keep that powder loose. Potentially having that ladder and having a plan.
All these things really can save a life and make a difference.
They really can. They really can. And I think that just as much as we want to think it's not going to happen to us, it's going to happen to someone. And if we could look into a crystal ball and tell you who it's going to be next, we could really be prepared for it. But it doesn't work that way.
Now, just real quick, we haven't gotten any new fire trucks lately. We got one last year?
We haven't had any trucks for several years. So
Okay.
we've had to tighten our belts a little bit with the economy, and we're keeping things a little longer than we have in the past. So we're doing good, though.
Well, thank you. This has been very interesting. And going back to the the smoke detectors, I wanted to mention, if someone has been living in a house quite a long time, many people just have one, especially in older home, one smoke detector. There should be one on every floor and ideally outside of every bedroom.
Yes. Well, you want one on every floor. And if you close your bedroom doors, not only should there be one on the outside of the door, which is going to be your hallway, but on the inside of the bedrooms, so that you can detect smoke on either side of the door. And your smoke detectors should be replaced at a minimum every 10 years.
Oh, I see.
So if they're 10 years old, get rid of them and put some new ones up.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for being on our program today.
My pleasure.
For all your words of wisdom. and for your service to our community. You're one of the good guys. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank all of you for watching Anderson Community Television. This is Carol Donahue saying, be safe, check your fire detectors, your batteries, and make sure your address is visible. Thank you.